Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the CFA program information session presented by the CFA Society South Florida. My name is Eric Benson, and I am the education chair for the CFA Society South Florida. And joining me is Tony Milanese, and he is one of the programs chairs for the society as well.
Yeah, so the programs chair or programs is just the events that we put on for the society, informational events about, the investment industry, what's going on in the world. So I help organize that.
And before we get started, I'd just like to thank FAU for allowing us to use our facilities and hosting us. This is great. And we're going to go over the CFA program. We're going to go over several different parts of it. All in, it should take about 45 minutes, but I want to make sure everyone knows the floor is always open for questions. So as I'm going, feel free to stop me and ask any questions regarding anything I'm going over instead of waiting to the end. I want to make it a little more interactive because I think it's going to answer a lot more of your questions versus me running through the slides and going over information that we can all kind of find online.
Yeah, and we were actually both sitting in those seats not too long ago, maybe a little longer than we want to admit, but so by all means, like, we've been in your shoes before, so feel free to just file in with questions.
And for reference, I'm a 2013, I earned my charter, and 2016. So it's been a while. We're old school pen and paper type people. Nowadays, everything's computer based. I don't know what to think of that. It sounds awesome. But we'll go through a lot of the questions and issues with that and highlight a few of the things too. First off, I want to introduce you to the CFA Society South Florida. And as you see on screen, we have over 500 members now. The society was formed in 1971, and our geographical footprint is from Fort Lauderdale to Jupiter. You see a few of our top employers and occupations. I am a senior vice president of fixed income technologies for Insperex, based in Delray. And Tony?
I'm a financial advisor with AllianceBernstein.
And with our society, we offer candidates a lot of resources, including, most importantly, the live level 1 review course offered through FAU. Tony and I are each products of this class. It helped immensely. I don't think I would have got through level 1 in one shot without it. We have the next class starting in January. It'll run through May, and it's both in person and virtual. So it's a great option. If you can make it to class, I highly recommend it. But if virtual is your only way, I think the FAU level 1 review course with the professors they use, I have to give it a lot of credit, Tony.
Yes,
second that.
Same thing. And it's not an easy designation to get, as you'll probably find out as we're going through maybe some of the hour requirements. But I think especially for level 1, having the FAU class gave me kind of up the structure I needed to sort of get started because it is difficult. So.
And it's a ton of information, we all know, but the professors teach you how to look at the questions, how to look at the exam, how to work your way through it. Something that you could study on your own and do it, but these guys and girls will walk you through the ins and outs of how to get through level 1. I thought that was really important, and I have to give them a lot of credit. Also, with the CFA Society South Florida, we do offer a discounted student membership, and that gives students access for $25 access to our networking events and all of our socials and career development events at the member rate. So I think it's a great value. Also, you get discounted exam prep materials and various other things that, for $25, I think it really helps out. And networking, it's about who you know, and being able to rub elbows with other charter holders through your process, I think can really help. And who knows what it leads to.
And yeah.
Yes.
And just one thing I wanted to add. So it's funny, Eric and I do completely different things in the investment management industry. So what's really great about getting the designation and also getting access to the CFA Society down here in South Florida is you're going to get exposure to a lot of different types of professionals in the industry. So it's not as if you have to pick 1 or 2 paths. There's really, the possibilities are endless. So strongly would encourage you to come out to some of our networking events. And also too, I know from a geographical perspective, going all the way from Fort Lauderdale to Jupiter sounds pretty daunting in terms of how often or where we host events. I think for the most part, we try to do a pretty good job of keeping things pretty central. So typically we'll probably be in like the Boca Delray area, and we might go a little further south, a little further north, but we try to really keep it central.
Here are two upcoming events we do have. Friday, October 28th, we have the Art After Dark Women in Finance event. And November 8th, we do have the Charter Award ceremony, which anyone that earned their charter in 2022, we will be recognizing. And now let's begin the CFA Institute overview, and we'll go into the program afterwards. So the CFA Institute is a globally recognized brand. And I think the resources it offers and all the various programs and that it focuses on for the candidates themselves is really helpful on the career side as well. Here are the various programs I mentioned. We have the CFA program, the CIPM, and the ESG, which we will discuss later in the program. Tony was going to go over that. And now we'll get into the CFA program itself. So the CFA is the gold standard, and it's internationally recognized. It's held by 185,000 professionals in 160 markets. It's now been open to, do we have any undergrad students here, by the way, at all? Okay, so it's been open to undergrads now, so you can take level 1 as you're sitting your junior year. You can take level 1, and you can take level 2 once you graduate. So you can have both levels done for undergrad within 3 months after graduation. It's kind of a pretty, they didn't have that when I was available, and it's pretty nice to be coming out of college with 2 levels of CFA done. I mean, that should stand out on your resume. I think one of the biggest things the CFA program tries to emphasize is the ethical foundation, as they're mentioning here. We go across many different asset classes, studies, and different methods, portfolio management, wealth planning. You have accounting, statistics, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, ethics is the center of everything. Making sure the clients come first, your company comes first, and everything's done in an ethical manner. And I think the code of ethics that CFA program pushes really sets it apart. And when you sign off on the code of ethics, you're stating that, hey, I'm following this. And employers, clients, customers all see that. And I think that helps you stand out as well. There are 3 levels of the exam, 1, 2, and 3. And as I mentioned, you see ethics is at the center point of all 3 exams. Level 1 is all multiple choice, and it focuses on the quantitative methods, economics, finance reporting and analysis, and corporate finance. And it's really about comprehension. As Tony can attest to, it's a ton of questions, and they go across every single topic that they study. Excuse me?
I think that was you echoing.
Oh, so they go across every topic. So the big thing there is making sure you're studying everything. They want to know if you've gone through all the curriculum and how well you know it. And if you have a weak spot, it's going to find it. And one thing I can tell you, studying for level 1 is take as many questions as you can, practice questions all day long. When I was studying for it, any chance I get, I was doing a practice question. Nowadays, I'll show you here shortly, they have the learning ecosystem where they're giving you access to these questions all online. I think they even have an app now for your phone. So if you're sitting around, waiting for a meeting or a phone call or whatnot, you can hop on and do some questions. Level 1 is questions based.
Yeah, I was actually going to add, this was, maybe like some people, I wish I studied maybe a little bit more undergrad wise when I was doing my finance degree. And I remember taking level 1 years after, and the closer you are to taking finance classes, statistics and things like that, I think the easier it'll be for you to kind of digest the information, because for me, it was almost as if a consolidation of everything I had learned in undergrad that maybe you should have paid a little bit more attention to. And if I had taken it a little bit closer, it just would have come a lot easier. So it's something you can absolutely do, but you have to put in the time. And I remember specifically, even though I was a finance major, the amount of hours that were required just to keep your game sharp, because it is a lot of questions. It covers a lot of different subject areas, and there most likely will be specific areas that maybe you don't feel as comfortable with. So the more time you spend, and obviously that was the real benefit that the FAU program gave me, was kind of giving me this really nice structure and timeline of, make sure I've done these readings before class the next week. And it just kept me on a really good schedule. And then ultimately you kind of figure out the pace and what works best for you.
And I worked on a fixed income trading desk for 6 years prior to taking level 1. And when I first started taking practice questions, I was not faring too well in fixed income. I learned something new every day through every chapter. So I think it broadens your horizons, really gives you a good glimpse into the whole market and how everything works. And once you start seeing how things feed off each other, it still offers benefits to me today. As I'm going through different markets, I can jump between asset classes and you have a good understanding, all because you went through this curriculum. Level 2 is more application analysis. It's all vignettes with, I think 6 questions per vignette. So they're going to go through a topic and they're going to ask you 6 questions on each. They're going to drill down and see how well you know the topic. Whether it's equity analysis, I think they even get into real estate valuations. Swap pricing was very interesting. Level 3, the first half is written. So you're gonna have several written questions. You're gonna have to write out your answers. The second half is multiple choice. Now it's all CBT versus going in an auditorium with, 300 people. Yeah. Now you can go to one of the testing centers. I believe in Florida, we have 11. Locally, we have West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and if you're on the West Coast, Fort Myers. And here's the learning ecosystem I mentioned that the Institute provides. You can go in, it's kind of your portal to go in and see how you're doing, where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are. You can track your studying, and I think that helps you stay on task, know where you're going, stay on schedule. Staying on schedule is extremely important. Like they always say, it's 300 hours per exam that you need to study. So if you're getting behind, I think this portal helps you out. Stay on track. Don't get behind, because if you're scrambling at the end, it's going to lead to a less optimal result. And here are a few more details on the learning experience. I wish we had that. Yeah, they didn't have anything close to this when I was doing it, so take advantage of it. So here's the path to becoming a charter holder. You have to pass levels 1, 2, and 3. And then you have to have 4,000 hours of qualified professional work experience. What that entails is the role you're using for the 4,000 hours has to be 50% involved in investment management or some form of investment activity, whether it's even if it's investment management, even in wealth planning. So it has to be in that field. Someone asked one time if managing your personal money counts as hours. It does not, unfortunately, unless you're being compensated and being reviewed, it's not going to count towards it. Then you have to have 2 to 3 references, and you have to meet the regular membership requirements, and you get your charter. And once you go through all that and they send you the charter in mail, it's the best feeling in the world. I thought just getting the final results, if you pass level 3, 1, 2, or 3, was great. Getting the charter in the mail and putting it up on the wall, that was a game changer for me. And here we go, the keys to CFA program success, as if we haven't hit a few of them. Average completion time is 4 years. Most people doing it between 2 and 5. Now with computer-based exams, they're doing the exam 4 times a year for level 1, 2 times a year for level 2, and 2 times a year for level 3. You can probably do it in 18 months if you cram hard enough. So manage it as you wish. As I mentioned, 300 hours. You have the ecosystem, the curriculum print book, if you want to buy it extra, or else everything's online, and digital tests and practice exercises. We had the old thick books back, and Robert brought a few of the study exams. There you go. If you want to see how big they are. Everyone at home, they're as big as you think they are. I would recommend reading as much of it as all of it, cover to cover, and go from there. I started just reading through it all. Then I did the FAU review course, and I think that really helped out. Tony, I don't know about you.
Yeah, I think because Robert, you guys don't offer. There's not a level 2 program, right?
It's on the bench.
Okay.
Even the level 1, we started with a certain amount, and halfway through,
yeah,
50% of students.
So again, I'm only speaking from personal experience, but level 1 and the FAU program and just staying on track with that and putting in the work, answering the questions was all, and there's things I could have done better, but that got me through level 1. Level 2 is a grand canyon of a difference in terms of difficulty and volume of information. And I think what a lot of candidates do is they they get their study materials, just like they did at level 1, because obviously it was successful, and they just reduplicate the same thing. From my personal experience, I would probably recommend getting, in addition to whatever study materials you get, the CFA curriculum, because the volume of information, there's going to be holes missed. It's like when you were in, elementary school, middle school, and you'd have to do summer reading, and, some people get the cliff notes, like there's going to be details that you miss. And at level 2, that could really be the difference between passing and not passing, because that's usually the test where if people pass level 1 and they end up not getting their charter, it's because they can't get through level 2. So it is a bear. Level 3 is also really difficult. And I think what that does is really like iron out your deep understanding because of the written section. That was personally for me, that was the most difficult. But you can see it in the pass rates, which I don't know if we have the statistics of that on there.
We'll get to that here shortly. We have the candidate resources page on the CFA website. I highly recommend you go on there and check that out, see everything that they offer, go through everything. Don't leave any stone unturned. Programs, scholarships. Now, the Institute offers the Access Scholarship. I'm looking for the dates. We will email you the dates afterwards, but there is an Access Scholarship which waives the enrollment fee and cuts the exam registration fee down to $250. And it can be applied to all of the exams. You have to apply through the CFA Institute website, and they will review that. We also have role-based scholarships, and there's also women's scholarships as well. This is the exam pricing for 2022. I was just informed by Robert that the pricing has gone up. So check the CFAI website for that.
I think the enrollment fee went down though, right, Robert?
Yeah.
$100.
Yeah.
And here's the exam schedule. So level 1, you're in February, May, August, and November. And then level 2, you're doing May, August, and November. And level 3 is February and August. I believe you have to wait 6 months between exams or to move on to the next level. So you take level 1, pass it, you have to wait 6 months to take level 2.
You'll need the 6 months.
You will need 6 months. Again, we went through the value of the charter. I think if you have time, go back to CFA Society. We had a career development panel in this very room last spring with several members of talent acquisition members of local companies, Poland Capital and JM Family. We also had Melissa Kellenberger, our president from Seacoast, and Jan von Herber-Huel from Truist, and they went over the value of the charter and in today's job market as far as finding a job in South Florida. And the talent acquisition specialists, they really focused on the CFA charter. That was a big deal when they were looking to hire people on the portfolio management side, trading side, strategist side. That was key to getting in the front door. We have 500 members here in charter holders in this area, and they were still finding it hard to find people with CFA charters down here. So it adds a lot of value. It helps you stand out. If you have a few minutes, I highly recommend going back and listening to what they said. It speaks volumes for the importance of the charter, especially in South Florida. They're going out of state, out of area to recruit people in because they can't find them down here. So having a charter down here definitely helps you stand out.
It is, don't want to say a PhD, but it really is like the #1 designation you can have in finance. It shows, A, you're smart because you have to work really hard and you have to be pretty bright to get through it. Probably the work ethic aspect of it is more so just given the hours. But it is a real game changer if you have that. It shows your commitment to the industry. So when employers are hiring, and that was one of the #1 things that the recruiters said, was that if you have your CFA designation, or even if you are a candidate, right? So you've passed level 1 or level 2 and you're going through it, it just shows that you're really committed. And in this day and age, I think people tend to switch jobs a lot, especially younger people. Recruiters would find it hard sometimes for people to come on and then stay committed. So when you have that CFA or you're pursuing it, it really does make a difference. One story about me. So again, I didn't grow up in a family of finance. A lot of this stuff was really foreign to me. So one of the reasons I took the CFA designation is I was really weak in a lot of the financial analysis. And and I thought I might want to be an advisor and be in wealth management. And I knew that based on conversations I had with family members, that weren't in the finance and on sort of another side of my family that were in the finance industry, speaking with people at my firm, there's two main designations that people would get in my world, which is the CFP, which is really common, and the CFA. Not putting anything against the CFP, but the CFA goes much deeper. It's much harder to get. So at the time, I decided to go for it, do my CFA. And I remember having a conversation with somebody maybe 3 or 4 years after I had my charter. I was putting feelers out there for potentially switching opportunities. And the firm that I spoke with, I never, ever, ever would have gotten in front of 5, 6 years earlier. And he told me verbatim that if you have a CFA, I'm telling you, the top firms, Goldman Sachs, all these amazing firms, they consider you, if you have experience and you have a designation, and like a high-end MBA equivalent. So, typically firms like that, they'll only look for Ivy League MBA graduates. If you have a CFA and experience, he's in charge of hiring. He told me that verbatim. So that was like the real light bulb went off, that I wouldn't even be able to sit here and have this conversation if I had not pursued the charter.
And here's what you could do with the CFA charter. We did have a question. Yes, we will email you this presentation. We will also send out information on the FAU course as well. And I think that'll be very helpful. And if you ever have any questions after the event, you can always email us back and we'll try to help out. Equities is leading the pack as far as primary practice, with fixed income right behind it as expected with market size. And portfolio manager, that's the direction you're looking to take your career. I think the CFA charter is the main designation to focus on and is held highly in that field, especially. And any questions so far regarding the charter and the exam process? Go.
As far as class, finance, where you came from, so and I didn't study finance. What is your recommendation?
They're going to go as deep as this exam is going to take you. They're going to go through all the material that's going to be on the exam, how to look at it, how to study it. So, the exam's so broad. I don't think anyone is well versed in every single topic. So everyone's going to have a beginning stage in some of the areas of study. So I think the class professors really dig into that and help you build a foundation, first of all, to understanding the topic, and then they help you get through the questions.
Yeah, I think so. Because I went through this, I was really nervous about taking the charter and starting to prepare, and then all these concepts that I had gone over, was supposed to, and internalize in undergrad. I just didn't really I did enough to pass and get my degree, whatever. But I was like, there's no way I'm going to remember, how to figure out standard deviation. They go 101 with everything. So if you forget it all, if you studied it, forgot it all, like I did, then you can, if you work hard enough, you'll be able to get through. So that I would say level 1 in particular covers all these different topics, but it, instead of going all the way to the sea floor, right, like level 3 does, or maybe a little bit less than that at level 2, level 1 covers really broad level, but it does teach you concepts kind of right from the beginning. So it's not as if you have to have this amazing amount of prior knowledge before taking level 1, if that helps. Okay.
And you'll walk away from level 1 with a whole new understanding of just about everything in finance and investments. So you'll come out thinking you know everything, but you don't yet. You still have 2 more exams to go. We have 2 questions. First is, are there any grants to help with the costs of the exam prep at FAU course? Robert, do you have anything set up?
Our courses are non-free.
Got it. Well, not through FAU.
I'll send it via email, some information.
Yeah, we'll send out some information regarding the course, and email us at CFA Society South Florida, and we can look into that as well on our side.
I would add though, just something to note, and again, it depends on your employer, right? Like post-school, a lot of firms, because the CFA is so desired, a lot of firms might cover some of or a portion of the cost. So that's just something to ask. I know like mine helped me out a little bit. So it's something that's pretty common, but the only way to really find out is asking.
We have another question. Does audit and financial analysis experience count? It does. And on top of the CFA curriculum, Schweizer or Wiley, which is better. I use Schweizer for levels 2 and 3. I don't know which is better.
I did Schweizer too, so I can't really speak to which one's better.
Yes, accounting and finance will count, and you need 4,000 hours of relevant work experience. And I kind of wish I had more finance and a more accounting background going into the CFA program than I did. Yeah.
Apart from the point of view, what other
Question banks. As many questions as you can get.
The best source of material, which is a little bit more detail oriented, is the CFA curriculum, because that is the source of information that the CFA Institute tests from. So I would say that's the best, but I would consider it. I mean, level 1, again, does an awesome job with the program here. I didn't touch the CFA curriculum materials for level 1 and passed. So it's easy. I found the further I went, the harder it was and the more valuable the curriculum was. So I would always say that the absolute best source, if you want the more detail, is just going right to the CFA curriculum.
And every chapter will have questions at the end. So there's a lot of books, a lot of chapters, a lot of questions. So going through them, that's coming right from the CFAI, from the program itself. And the exam writers are only basing questions off that curriculum. They're not going anywhere else. So everything is already in those books. There's nothing missing. Although some people may think so, there's nothing missing.
Also, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'll ask.
So just a little tiny detail on that. And again, it's more prevalent at level 2 and level 3 as you get further and the volume of information gets larger. I only learned this when I took level 3 the second time. The CFA Institute will put in new information every year into the curriculum. And I can't speak for Schweizer and the study materials, but I know that there's things that they'll miss. And if it's new and the CFA Institute adds it, there's probably a pretty good chance they're going to test on it. So part of the reason they did it on, I don't want to say on purpose, but if you think if they're grading towards a curve, right, and they want to keep those pass rates within a certain band, how do you separate from other CFA charter takers, right, or people who are pursuing the designation? How do you separate when you're taking the exam? It might be going a level deeper. Again, level 1 passing is great. The pass rates are higher. It's still difficult, but the further you go, I would strongly recommend going straight to the curriculum in addition to the study materials.
Here's an example from the spring presentation we did. They had machine learning and big data were added to the exam and financial technology. So they're always adding something new to stay relevant with the current markets. So they will announce that. They will tell you what's involved as well. Do we have one more? As far as MBA in finance, that does not count towards work experience, unfortunately. You had a question?
I just had a question about like the timing, right? So the level 1 exam, say you want to take it in March, when does the review class start? How frequently is the class? Kind of logistics.
So the class starts in January, runs through May.
And then have another one August to middle of November.
So if you didn't hear Robert, we have one January through May and August through November. So if you take the class January to May, you probably want to sit for the August exam. There is a May exam. We were talking about it earlier. I don't know. I mean, that's pretty tight with the class. You want to get through it because they go through every single section. And if you skip a section, that could be the difference between passing and failing. You want to make sure you exercise everything you can. But if you could do it, through, or you can do the August, November, and then go ahead and take it in February. So
yeah, I think for me, and probably most people that I know that have gone through and gotten their charter, I think definitely at least a month and a half of when you finish whatever review course you're going through, because what that'll end up doing is it'll get you through the curriculum once, right? Then you did things in January or February that you're going to maybe not totally remember. So you might have to go through the curriculum yourself 2 or 3 times, or all the questions from each section 2 or 3 times to keep those muscles working. So for me, I could not imagine anything less than a month, but it was probably better like month and a half to 2 months after going through the curriculum the entire way in the study course the first time.
We have one more question. Is there a prescribed period within which you should take and pass the other levels after passing level 1? I would say no. You pass level 1, you could sign up for level 2 as long as you're in good standing with the
That's-
institute.
That might be more of a mental health question.
Yeah. I personally, I try to take it as hard and fast as I could. As soon as I passed level 1, I was signing up for level 2. I took level 1 in, I think it was December back then, and I had already bought all the books and got everything ready for level 2. As soon as all the Kaplan Schwager, I think I used for level 2, had all that set up and bought before I even got my results because I was already going to level 2, and I took it in June right after. So you can really get on it. But you
I was the
have to-
opposite. I did, this was again, they didn't offer the test as much, so they offered level, I did June. So I would go from basically January through June or through May studying, take the test in early June, and I would take that next 6 months off. So to your point about, do you have to like retain and remember the information? So that even that break I had during level 2 will still go over everything as if you had not taken level 1. It's not like you have to go back to level 1 and remember everything. That was really helpful. It just goes way deeper. So you might have to catch on a little quicker, but you will because of all the prep that you do for level 1. It'll come quicker.
I guess you could say they're not going to make you take level 1 again if you've already passed it. So rest assured
Yeah.
there. Do you need to be working to be eligible to take the exam? No, you have to have a college degree. And now you can even start taking level 1 your junior year. As long as you're within 11 months of graduation, you can sit for level 1. We were talking about that earlier. It sounds great. Managing your course loads and studying for the CFA exam, that could be difficult, but it's all relevant, topics if you're in the right field of study. Real quick, we want to go through the new certificate in ESG investing. This is Tony's specialty, and we're going to go over it real quick just to give you a quick look at another program offered by the CFA Institute.
Yeah, and actually I only learned a little bit more detail about this certificate just recently, about a month ago, because the CFA is pretty new for the CFA Institute. But as some of you may or may not know, ESG is much more prevalent. If you turn on or read in the Wall Street Journal or turn on CNBC, it's a topic that seemingly is always on the ticker. That is in a lot of ways somewhat controversial because there's a lot of gray area, but no question, it is. And you'll see in some of the statistics that we go through, which I think are pretty interesting, it has tons of momentum behind it. So if you're looking forward towards the future, part of the reason I was interested in it is I've been at my firm for 13 years. And in the last 5 or 6 years, I cannot tell you how many more clients and people I work with are asking about it. So doesn't mean that you're all ESG or the other. It just gives you a really great basis of knowledge, tells you some of the history about the certificate, about ESG investing, because it used to be called SRI, right? Socially responsible investing. It's been around a really long time, but now I'd say in the last 6 or 7 years, it is at the forefront of a lot of conversations that you'll have either with clients, institutions, and I think some of the statistics are pretty interesting. I'm just going to fast forward here. So on the right-hand side, this is showing is that of the 976 institutional investors that were interviewed, 100% of them, said that they considered it important to have or to study or get that certificate in their career. So institutions are clearly way behind it, right? And then what follows is retail investors, which would be people, us in this room, right, is becoming much more popular in conversation about aligning your investments with maybe what matters to you. And the vehicles to be able to do that are a lot more prevalent now than they were, 10 or 15 years ago. And same thing with accounting and finance students. There's a massive interest and a lot of capital behind it in terms of aligning business interests, right? And attaining new clients, new customers, and understanding that those companies are doing well, right, by the universe. But again, there's a lot of gray area because there's not really a hard and fast black and white way to do a socially responsible investing. So it's a great way to learn about it. I have not yet signed up for it, but I hope I am in the next few months. It's something that my firm is really interested in. So I just think that everything kind of aligns. Again, this is just more about why ESG investing is important. Assets under management grew 20% to more than $100 trillion just in the first half of 2020 alone. Principal or PRI signatories increased by 28%. Again, assets management grew. 90% of investment professionals expect their firm's commitment to ESG research will increase. So whether you agree or disagree with it or have an opinion on it, there's no question that it's a huge part of day-to-day investment research and money management. Let's see.
And we did a full webinar on the ESG certificate. The society did, I believe it was in August. So you can visit our website for the replay of that, and we'll send more information again after this event. We'll email everybody several links, including the FAU class and some of the YouTube links as well.
And you do not have to be a CFA charter holder to pursue the certificate. And in terms of hours and time commitment, again, I haven't done it myself, so I can't speak from personal experience, but from a time commitment standpoint, it's not 300 hours, it's closer to 100 to 130. So I just did the quick math, 16 weeks, that's about a little over 7 hours a week, which I think the CFA charter is more like 14 to 16 hours a week. So doable, and you can see that reflected also in the pass rate, which stands at 80%. These are just some examples of companies and how important it is pursuing things. I mean, Nextera here, you know, up in Jupiter, Hope Sound area is, I mean, they're one of the leaders in terms of like new renewable energy, and it makes a massive difference for them on their, you know, to their potential investors, their stock price. So if they're aligning, right, the way the world has moved in the last 6 or 7 years, there's a real benefit for companies having their goals aligned with what matters to potential investors, which drives their stock price and revenue and et cetera, et cetera. So these are just examples of different stories. This is a little bit of a breakdown of the syllabus. It just goes into different sections and what they'll test on. I thought for me, when we had this panel on of, again, I only learned more detail about the certificate a month ago. We had 3 panelists that had taken the certificate, all from different, you know, levels of experience in the investment profession, all do different things, and all of them describe the benefits. But for me, the one that was most interesting is they go into a lot of the history and origins of how socially responsible investing, ESG, kind of got started. Because again, there's a lot of gray areas. So I think the more you understand some of the ins and outs, when you're having conversations with people, whether it's potentially new employers, other students, you know, investors, you know, whatever career path you end up going on, knowing more than, you know, 95% of everyone else is always a good thing, especially if the world's going to continue to move in that direction. As far as cost, so there's a $675 registration cost. Again, we went over some of the hours, and unlike the CFA charter, where it has a scheduled exams, right? You know, January, June, March, you know, it changes for each level. This does not. So it is a at your own pace study process, and you can then sit for the exam, which is 2 hours and 20 minutes, essentially at any point that you prefer. So which gives you a lot of added flexibility. And it's a 100-question multiple choice test. And that's all I had on ESG.
Any questions on the ESG certificate? Anyone?
The ESG mentioned that you had local employers come in and
Yep.
Is there a link where we can find that?
Yeah, it's on YouTube, and we will email it to you as well.
It was actually kind of interesting about when we had the ESG panel. I just thought of this. The panel we had, so most of the time when we do events, right, and we have panelists, they're usually people that are local. Maybe we'll fly someone in from the Southeast to come and speak to the society. This was really interesting because our panel was not local. We had one person from Miami. The chapter in the Cayman Islands was interested because it's new to the CFA Institute. So a lot of charter holders like us, because it's such an interesting topic, we wanted to know more about the certificate. So other societies, CFA Society of Miami, we partnered with them, and then the Cayman Islands chapter did it as well. So it's a really interesting, I thought that's just a cool example of how it really opens doors and just shows kind of the reach that the topic has, because we've never done that before.
Great. Any other questions?
This is just a random question. Because you said the CFA Society of Miami, how many members do they have? So what would be the total number that is in all of kind of greater South Florida?
Do you know that?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I think I want to say they have more members. They don't,
There's, I believe, still under 300.
Okay.
Okay.
Between us and Miami, we're around.
And guess what? They're all growing because guess where everybody's coming? South Florida, right? One thing we didn't go over, and I know it can be of top of mind for several reasons, but is the pass rates for the exam levels 1, 2, and 3. Specifically, recently, we saw a pretty big drop off, during the pandemic, from running in the 40s down to like 25. I think it was 25%
For level one.
for level 1. I think it was a major drop off. And I think that spooked a lot of people. So I went back and did some research, and I saw an interesting piece from the Institute themselves, and they talked about how they score the exams, and people wonder if there's a curve to adjust their pass rates, and there isn't. It's a fixed bar. So when you see people not passing, I think it's tough. It's a very hard exam. It's rigorous. And, during the pandemic, there's several reasons why an individual may or may not be able to put the time in, and distractions and whatnots. Exam locations, I mean, it had to be tough, but it dropped down in the 20s, and now I think it's back up to the 40s, but that's a big number. I mean, it's only 40% of the people. When you walk into this huge room, only, 40% of them are going to pass, sometimes in the high 30s. And I think the biggest difference there is how hard you study and whether you're willing to put in what it takes to get it done. It's very doable. It's very doable. But if you don't put the time in, you'll be taking it again. So just keep that in mind. Well, with the class, absolutely. And I ended up having like study groups with several people there. We linked up after the class and worked through things and had questions. We touch base.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was more of like a personal thing. Like, I just feel like I was better off studying kind of on my own. Probably could have used the help on level 3 the first time I took it. So I think it just depends on what you're comfortable with. But by all means, the resources and the ability to connect and the FAU program is an amazing starting point, because I definitely had the opportunity to do that. I just kind of chose not to. Yeah, I think most people that I know that have passed and had a good experience, I think either had at least one person that they would rely on or ask questions. And then the further along I went, if there was a difficult topic or something that just was not clicking, when I got to level 2, level 3, I absolutely would call, friends of mine that I had met, either through the FAU program, or I just knew that they were taking it as well, or had just taken it.
And, level 3, I think really helps because now you have the writing portion.
Yeah.
And you can see the previous exams and they give you the answers. You can see them all spelled out. So going through that and trying to interpret that, how to answer the questions properly, I think that helped. I had a friend of mine that was taking the exam at the same time. I met him through the FAU course or the info session and an FAU course. So we were to bounce ideas off each other as well.
I would actually say too, even outside of like content and being able to bounce ideas off of whoever you meet in study groups and connect with, when you get about a month out, and if you're having difficulty, I mean, there's a real anxiety that can settle on you. So even if it was just venting to someone, because unless you're going through it or someone has gone through it, it's really hard for really anybody to understand how difficult it is. So even from that aspect, maybe not it's content driven, maybe it's just talking about your experience, how your people are spending their time, just to be able to have somebody to confide in was pretty helpful for me.
It sounds daunting, but at the end of the day, it's extremely rewarding professionally and personally, because now you're digging into things you've never heard of in some cases. And it could be interesting to you. You could open up a new path in your career, or something that piques your interest in the middle of studying, interest rate swaps. And that's your new passion, right? And I found myself as exhausted as I was after taking the exams, going back and learning and going deeper in certain topics because it was interesting. And I think you have to have that curiosity taking this exam, and it's going to push you to your limits in all these different asset classes. But as you see things come together, you're going to stop and think back, man, I had a total misunderstanding of that market and how it functioned. And I think as you progress and you see doors open as a result of the charter, all your hard work does pay off. So you might be sitting there and everybody's out enjoying themselves on a wonderful Saturday and you're locked in the room studying, making sure you're getting through level 2, for instance. Know that it is rewarding and know that you can always go back and read that stuff later too. It's really interesting. But at the end of the day, when you get your charter and you put the 3 letters after your name, it's a great feeling. But then, as our career panel said, there is interest there. And it's real, and especially in South Florida, this is a great place to be with a charter because there's not as many. There's 500 plus local. It's almost like they're all taken. So there is a job market for the CFA charter holder right now,
and it definitely stays with you. Maybe not everything, but even concepts that I haven't heard of in 5, 6, 7, 8 years that I remember studying during the entire process of taking the CFA. The amount of work that you put in, it does stay with you. So your ability to pick it right back up is even greater. And the one analogy I'll use, so if you know anybody who's gone through law school, obviously law school, especially the first year, is really difficult for people. People who have gone through it, I've heard this term, like it kind of rewires kind of the way they think and it rewires their brain. That is what the CFA charter did for me. So when it's not only does the knowledge base stay with you in some of the concepts, but also just the way you think about things, not even just in the world of finance, but just life, right? You just become more analytical because you went through it and because it is that difficult and rewarding, but it is rewarding. And that's why we're standing here. So,
and while you're taking the exam or thinking about taking an exam or after your exam, come to some of our events and meet some of the other charter holders in the area and talk to them and go through their experiences and lean on them and see what else they can say and any pointers, because everyone has their own path, their own journey to getting the charter. So everyone is unique. So whatever fits you best, but just know that it's very doable and you can do it if you want to put the 300 hours in. Any other questions?
Yes. I'm sorry, Robert, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you guys for coming out, and help us with that. Actually, I'm driving out from my work. When I started, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't hear, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. You guys talking about how valuable is the CFA, and again, you just saying it's really rewarding to have that CFA certificate. But my thing is, especially in South Florida, I have a bachelor degree in economy, a bachelor in accounting here at FAU. Actually, I'm doing my MBA in finance here at FAU too. But my question is based on an observation. The observation is here in South Florida, we got the CFAs and the CPA, which is they're not really paying that much. Not in Florida. I would say South Florida especially. Not like people in New York. So the fear we have is like we're gonna put all this amount of effort, study, and on top of that working and everything that afterward they're gonna ask for experience. Usually that's how they do. When you got your certificate, asking you do have a 5 years experience, or is that, I don't know, is that thing now? Because you said that people asking for CFA nowadays. Do you think that's not going to be a problem? Asking for 5 years experience.
Are you saying are you saying the work experience on top and not having the work experience but having the CFA?
Yeah. Correct. Work experience, exactly.
Yeah, that's going to be an issue. I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis. Some companies, are open to that and they like, basically a fresh canvas and they can mold you and teach you and put you into their methods and processes. Others do want some experience. And I think that would be the case across the board in any profession. I think there's a lot of roles, though, you won't even get in the door without a CFA charter. So I think you're eliminating one hurdle in a sense to a lot of professions and career opportunities.
Yeah, and I think so from a geographic perspective, right? If maybe the cost of things might not be worth it in certain markets, I mean, the CFA is again, it's a global designation. It's recognized everywhere around the world as the top financial designation that you can get. So whether you think you might have to move or relocate, and sometimes you might have to have connection, like personal connections, right? To be able to, it's always been who you know, not what you know. The CFA is a little bit different. So if you're committed to the finance industry and you either have your charter or you're pursuing it and have passed level 1, level 2, like that matters. You can put that on your resume that you're, what's the correct terminology? You're a candidate.
Yep.
Right. It matters. Like I can speak from experience. Like I got into the advisor training program at AB because I was the only one who was actually past level 1 and was going into level 2. So it just shows your commitment. You don't have to have the 3 letters behind your name for it to really matter in a job search process, and it's global. So there's not going to be any doors that are closed because of it. Now, if it's an MBA in finance versus CFA, I can't speak that. Look, an MBA is never a bad thing. So that would, I think, be a personal choice. You might want to talk to somebody who has
Do both.
potentially both. Yeah, I can't speak to it. I just couldn't imagine it being a bad thing to have. Again, I don't know the comparison. I couldn't imagine having a master's in finance would be a bad thing. It's still really impressive, but I think, and maybe more so globally, right?
And it's also role-based too, right?
Yeah,
If you're going to be a portfolio manager, there's a lot of relevant content in the CFA program that they may look to see, your expertise there. While a master's in finance can still handle that. It may differ, from, depending on the business line.
yeah. So like, private equity or investment banking, like they're typically they're going to look for MBAs, right? Now, there might be, obviously business, but I think that maybe a master's degree matters more in that realm. But the only way to really know is to just ask people that have worked at those places and just see what their opinion is.
Any other questions? Well, we're going to send out an email with the FAE course, as we mentioned, the details on the spring class. I'll send the link to the career panel we did, as well as the ESG event we did in August, so you have those resources. I think that career panel really talks to the CFA market in South Florida and the benefits of having the charter and what they're looking for. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to email the society. We hope to see you at some of the events. And Tony, anything else?
No, are they going to have our contact information? Because
Yeah, we'll have our email addresses as well. So if you ever want to reach out to us, feel free.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see you at an event, and
even if it's a year or two from now and you just want to ping us, like, again, that's what's cool about people that have done it and they know how hard it is. So if you have questions about prep, coming to an event, even if it's not right away, if it's a year or two later, feel free to reach out.
awesome. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.